This is the Fly Culture Podcast with me, your host, Pete Tigers. Welcome everybody to the very latest Fly Culture Podcast. This is being recorded in January. I don't know if you're like me, but we're sitting looking out the window at rain again. There seems to be some sort of anomaly that whenever I mention fishing, it pours down with rain. So my hope is that the Fly Culture Podcast is something you can enjoy if you're not getting to the water yourself. But I'm really pleased to be sitting down with my friend Bruno Vincent today. He works for the Westcountry Rivers Trust and has also recently joined the Wild Trout Trust. I'm going to be learning a little bit about fish apps, the Wild Trout Trust auction, and about Bruno's fishing career as well. How's it going, Bruno?
Good. You think you're bad. Every time I get in the car to go anywhere near a river, it seems to be hammering down. So, this isn't actually that strange for me.
Have you managed to be able to chase some grayling or anything so far this year?
No, not at all.
No, it is a little bit depressing.
Stars are not lining.
Yeah. Well, let's look backwards a little bit. 2019, was that a good season for you?
It was a quiet season again. I've what with changing houses and jobs and various things, I've not done as much fishing as I had done in the previous few years, but I had some very, very nice days. Very nice days indeed, actually. And do you have a favourite place you like to fish that you're going to divulge, or is there somewhere that's really special to you that you like to go? You know, if you've got a couple of hours. I've been harking on about the Delank for the last few years. You've heard that, I know. I adore that place. I've spent entire days on what is not much more than about a mile, but I think I always come back to the Innie. I love the Innie.
That's a wonderful stream, isn't it? I can feel that 100% because it's so beautiful, so clean, so clear, and you got grayling as well.
Yep.
Which makes it that little bit more special as well.
Yep. I mean, there's just everything you can imagine in that river. It's a bit altered. It's a little bit man-made in places, but it's relatively natural for most of its length.
And for those listening that don't know the Innie, that is a stream in Cornwall that runs off of Bodmin, and it's a small little river, probably 10, 15 feet wide, something like that.
Down the bottom it gets a little bigger, but some of the most fishable places, you're not talking much more than a couple of rod lengths.
Yeah. I remember actually, now we're sitting here talking, that the video we did together, was that a couple of years ago? 2 years?
Yeah,
3
it
years?
was 2017, I think. Yeah,
that was great fun, wasn't it? The plan was to actually try and do a video for Westcountry Rivers Trust, and invariably, as we're talking about now, that the rain came and it came some more, and we met the next morning and we were going to start on the lid, and we made some half-hearted, the lid's a stream nearby, we made some half-hearted casts. The river was chocolate, I think it's a fair description, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks better today.
Yeah.
And today's hideous.
Yeah. And we decided to move and hit the Innie, and that bailed us out, didn't it? It was fantastic.
That was just clearing down. That was lovely.
Yeah.
That was a hell of a day, though, as is always the case with the kind of work that I end up doing. I think I had to make two videos in a day.
Wow.
And I got them both out by like midnight, and then collapsed for a good few days thereafter. But no, that was a godsend, because otherwise we really wouldn't have got anything out of that day at all.
And we had, I think it was the last day of the season, or second but last day.
Yeah, it was right up the end. For some bizarre reason, we didn't get a grailing, did we?
No. We had everything else.
That was strange. You had that lovely sea trout. That was a beautiful fish to pop out.
Yeah.
But no grailing. So it's a fickle beast, the Innie, but then that's another reason why I like it.
That's what makes us keep coming back, I think, isn't it? The challenge and everything that goes along with it. But tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did fishing, let's go back to the beginning. Where did fishing start? Where were your formative years? Where did everything start for you?
Well, I can pretty much remember the day that me and my best mate Dave were mulling around. His family had a little cottage out in South Wales that they used to go to every summer, and my family being much harder working than I am, rarely took holidays, so I used to get sort of chucked on the Mitchells, and go out to the Gower for a couple of weeks every summer, and as 8-year-olds running around, sort of buckets and spades and rubbish surfboards and all the usual stuff. Mulling around the shed, we found, I think it was an Abu spinning rod, and a very rusty Mitchell reel. Wasn't in good nick. Couple of Tobies, and his mum, who was quite a keen fisher, in fact very keen, took us out on the sea. We chucked the lines out for the first time. That was definitely the start of it. What happened thereafter was just a mess. I lived in Oxford. That was the sort of family home, and I had the River Cherwell by my school, and sort of about a mile away from the house. So mostly out of season, probably without a licence, and all the usual things you'd expect of a 8-year-old. Not that some people must be wondering what an 8-year-old's running around the field on his own these days, but chucking a waggler in with, the usual cliches of harking back to days of yore, dug up worms and all that, bits of sweet corn and whatever else from the kitchen. Seem to remember trying to do little flakes of honey roast ham. That never produced much, funny enough.
I guess you at least had lunch anyway, if nothing else, didn't you?
yeah, except it was all in tiny little parcels, so you had to sort of pick at it with your nails. I kind of messed around with a load of different fishing for a very long time. Somewhere in the middle of that, Dave's mum took me to Lockinge, which is sort of west of Oxford. It's kind of like an online still water, looks chalk stream-esque but has precious little flow, and taught me to cast a fly, and had a day not catching anything, but enjoyed the day nonetheless, and sort of shelved that sort of disappeared. I think, like a lot of people, I considered it to be a slightly slightly inaccessible, slightly more hoity-toity, more elite type of a sport. And here's me with my sort of crummy second-hand, I don't even know what kind of a rod it was, don't think I knew back then. The idea of fly fishing seemed unapproachable, so I just kind of gave it no thought.
Do you think that's changed now? That, it always was, and I've said on this podcast a number of times that the perception of fly fishing externally is that they're all genteel gentlemen in corduroy trousers and Tattersall check shirts and J.R. Hartley type characters. Do you think that's changed a little bit?
I hope so. I mean, certainly the type of people you meet at the fairs these days, they range from some of those guys to very, very salt-of-the-earth general people who just want a nice outdoor pursuit that they can afford, perhaps has some unaffordable bling to go with it, but, obviously we've got the sort of, I hate the term trout bum, but that kind of feel and movement exists as well. So, yeah, it should be approachable to anyone, I would hope.
It's interesting, we were at the Wild Trout Trust do on Dartmoor last year, and I immediately went for a young guy, big beard, long hair, cap on, Dan Osman, who I've subsequently got to know and has written for us, and he is a trout bum. Yeah, he lives in his car.
He's got
fishes,
a fold-down plywood bed in the back of his van.
Yeah.
Sorry, I hope you don't mind me saying that on the radio.
No, he's in the spring edition. He's written about that and about sleeping in the back of his car.
He was interning for Westcountry Rivers Trust this season, helping out with the electrofishing survey. He is he's a fish obsessed, and not just trout. I mean, he's bass angler, wrasse angler. I mean, he's catching some really, really nice wild fish. True young obsessive just the kind of person to drive things forward.
And it's interesting that I didn't detect that when I started, that sort of thing was happening. I suppose the books and everything else and Troutman helped that. But do you think, and I always bring up social media because it's so pertinent, but do you think that allows us to see and meet these sorts of people? Do you think they've always been there? Because I kind of got the feel that they weren't, but they may have been more sort of stillwater anglers, small stillwater anglers as well. Whereas now they gravitate more towards wild fish in wilder places.
Do you know what? I mean, the short answer is I think that's unanswerable. I don't think we could know because there's nothing to suggest it. But yes, generally social media and the internet and just sort of the kind of digital proximity that's closed in on everyone has uncovered things, countercultural things and stuff that used to be, underground counterculture, and now they kind of pop straight into the media and get, commercialised and marketed, and so speaking with a sort of media hat on, without a doubt, it's Instagram or whatever you choose to use has definitely opened up these things. Whether or not they existed, whether or not people have just searched out a new thing to do that other hipsters or whatever hadn't got their claws into. I mean, I used to live in Shoreditch in East London for a few years anyway, about 10 years, and I saw all of the fads and crazes come and go, from the Lambrettas to the fixies to the beards and the moustaches and all these different things. And at one point I did actually joke with a mate that after the fixed wheel craze, we should all go and hang outside a pub with our waders and fishing rods and call it the fixed reel craze.
Yeah.
And see if we could just get hipsters buying fishing gear, not use it, because they didn't ride their bikes very much anyway. But they bought this stuff and they generated, new bike shops or whatever. It's not good for the industry, but that kind of cultural thing can sometimes be spawned out of just a need for a new type of hobby that's not mainstream. Not generally good for industries, it has to be said. But if in the short term it works, it drives people towards the industry, and we can capitalise it and hold their interest, we should get our teeth into that.
We need that other spike, don't we? And I know on previous podcasts I've talked about the stillwater boom of the 70s and 80s, where we had that blip up on the graph where everyone was doing that. And now, of course, they're pensionable age and a little bit more, so may not be fishing in the same way that they were previously. And I guess the US may be a little bit behind that, because their spike would have been 91 with river runs through it and the growth in fly fishing there. I get the impression, though, in the US, Scandinavia, when I go fish for sea trout in Denmark, there's loads of cool younger guys fishing out there. The States, it's the same. We've got these people, but it doesn't feel as though in the same numbers.
Yeah,
perhaps.
I mean, I think Scandinavia, there is just about any kind of lifestyle that you meet in Scandinavia, there's always seems to be a very large outdoor chunk, whether it's city dwellers with a summer cabin in the woods, or sea trout fishers, or whatever it is. Their lifestyle across the board seems to always have a chunk of wholesome outdoor activity, and so it's obviously it's much easier for them to slide in to that, into fishing or shooting, if that's what they want to do, or any of these different pursuits. I think we've lost that in England, certainly. I grew up in the country. I was practically feral, and yet you can meet kids in town who, what was that? I think a kid who was pointing at a cow, wondering what that is, and it didn't realise that was where beef comes from. Or these weird stories, however real they may or may not be. We don't have that kind of, okay, I've got a job, but I'm now going to go and take in the world, take in nature, take in everything that's outside, blowing around in the wind today. and obviously in the States with the amount of natural landscape that they have, I mean, it's somewhat similar.
Do you think it is space? That was what I was thinking when you were saying that, actually. And in Scandinavia, it's the same. There's not so many people, and there's more space, and it's easier to find space without having to travel great distances to do so.
Think of all of those 80s. I forget what his name was, but the sort of Red Dawn and all those films from the 80s where the teenagers would, they'd go to the lake, You'd be lucky if people go to the canal. They've got more space. They've got this culture of using the space, using the environment. I was just reading yesterday about what's it? I'm sure something American. It's YKY, the Yukon to Yellowstone.
Wow!
And it's an area of essentially wilderness. I mean, obviously it has towns and stuff populated through it, but 5 times the size of the UK.
Wow.
Something like that. Someone can correct me. But when you're talking about that much available, as naturalistic as is possible space, culturally you're much more likely to go and explore it and use it. And we are somewhat on top of each other here.
Having done these, that's a really interesting point. Having done these podcasts, speaking to people, I'm going to ask you the same question, but I think I know the answer. But it feels to me as though there are fewer people possibly doing it, but they are, to use the term, a bit more hardcore. What do you think?
Again, I mean, because of my early because my early fishing history was somewhat checkered. I'm not sure I've got the sort of baseline to know whether there's a change, but I think I know what you're getting at. I think I recognise that sentiment, but I sort of couldn't possibly say. I know what you mean.
Yeah, when I was growing up, you did football in the winter, cricket and some fishing, and it was just things that you do.
And now it's
singular. It's a little, yeah, exactly. And those people who are in deep, they're in deep with it. But again, it may just come down that we can reach and find these people more easily to understand and see what they're actually doing.
Yeah, I think I really do recognise that. I mean, if you go back to the sort of Tattersall shirt wearing landed gentry fishing kind of image, they probably shot through the winter, salmon fished, trout fished, maybe did some stalking. They would have spread more evenly across a load of similar pursuits. And for someone on my income, it's a challenge to afford to do one of them. To get on the land to do one of them is hard enough in some places. So I guess as the sport, as fishing has become more open to everyone, I guess people probably have had to become a bit more focused as well. And the spendable cash is a difficult thing for a lot of people. So you can't forget that. Yeah, no, I totally recognise it. But
so my question was going to be, and we sort of answered it, I guess, how does it feel to you as somebody who's working in fly fishing? How does fly fishing feel to you right now?
Definitely optimistic. I mean, there's a lot of really good positive press. A lot of people talking about it. I mean, I remember just being interested in fishing 10 years ago. People they'd almost look like they were smelling you after a day on the bank. They couldn't quite work out what to do with that conversation. And now they're like, oh well, I read this piece in the paper, or oh I saw that that lovely thing about the Scottish lady fly tar up in and it's out there and it's intriguing people. So definitely positive. I still think there's a way to go to really preserve it. But things are going in the right direction.
Yeah, it doesn't to me, and talking to a lot of people in the situations like we're doing right now, the feel has always been positive back. It's not
Yeah.
doom and gloom, hand wringing, and everything else. It feels as though, it doesn't feel as though it's in a particularly horrific place right now.
No. I mean, I'd be a bit silly not to talk about the environment with my two of my professional hats on. We can't be blasé about the quality of the fishing, especially with things like salmon numbers. But in terms of getting people to try it and experience it and hopefully love it, that side's good. And the amount of times I've had to say out loud that anglers are the guardians of the river. They are the unpaid, passionate eyes and ears that are in the environment for us. The more young, keen 2020 eyes that we can get on the river, the better the environment might be as well. All going in the right direction.
Good. Now let's circle round again, because as always happens with these, I tend to go off topic. But so you had your first fly fishing session. I guess they were gravel pits up round there, were they, or old gravel pits in Oxfordshire?
Do you know what? I could not tell you what that is actually. I did visit it again once, but it's just it's quite a pretty, very small sort of ribbon of still water with some rainbow stockies in them. But no, I couldn't tell you what it was, what it was made up.
So what happened next?
Well, mostly I chunked lumps of lead and ragworm in the sea.
Right.
And I did quite a lot of that.
Where were you doing that? In the Gower still?
The Gower and some of the southwest. I think I've probably moved down to London by now. So go down to just accessible bits of the coast and chuck a 3-4 ounce lead and some shot-bought ragworm in the sea. And I still like doing that, actually. It's enjoyable just to sit down and zen out on a rod tip as the clouds pass by. Can be quite kind of dizzying sometimes. It was about 6-7 years ago that I actually a bit longer actually, probably maybe over 10 years ago, chucking spinners in the sea and then sort of sinking too deep and snagging on the rocks. And I just thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if you could throw something heavy enough out, but it wasn't so dense that it sank and hit the rocks, something that could float, something that could swim just under the column at a more natural speed. And the guy I was fishing with, actually, it was almost certainly Dave, but I can't remember, just turned around and went, "You can fly fish, you know." And I hadn't thought of it. And that was it. Started fly fishing for bass, and it just all twigged. I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible into a headwind, as everyone knows. But when the time and tide and everything else comes together, it was the answer to all of my problems.
This sums you up perfectly, coming at things from a completely different angle to everyone else instead of coming in at bass, rather than I was expecting you to say, right, well, I went to a trout lake and learned everything from there, and then I discovered a river, and then I thought about the still water. So it's interesting. And were you catching fish then?
Definitely not immediately, but the other bonus that I really love with fly fishing is obviously the activity, the motion, the intricacy of casting, some of the geeky technical aspects of it. So even if I wasn't catching, just putting out a cast into a 12 knot headwind with a small sand eel pattern, that was a bit of a buzz at the beginning. Yeah. Quite frankly, I don't think my bass on the fly has ever really been anything to write home about. Not given enough time, but it got me into it properly. So,
do you remember that first bass?
No. I'm not one for that.
No, I'm the same.
The amount of times you ask people, like, what's your first fishing? They most people say gudgeon. I didn't know what a gudgeon looked like back then. I just wasn't that. I'm not an academic person. Fish was a fish. That the interest in it grew on me as I did the pursuit. The idea that I would know what a gudgeon was. My dad wasn't sitting over my shoulder going, "Oh, well done, you caught a gudgeon." So perhaps it's that. And and I don't remember a lot of the fish I catch. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the reason why I go fishing is not to be obsessed with detail like that. It's to be absorbed in a bigger thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I'm similar to you, and I get that keeping a record of things could help you become a better angler.
Yeah.
But I had a conversation with somebody recently. I can't remember where it was or who it was with, but we were talking about records and bits and pieces like that, and it was really interesting to say, well, I don't keep a diary or a journal, and how that has... I want to, when I'm older, I want to be able to remember all of those moments themselves rather than...
Remember the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like, for example, that trip on the Inu that I filmed when I filmed you. Now, obviously, I made a video of it, so that helps, but I remember the day. And I remember spending an entire day walking through fairly old woodland covered in moss and dripping with the water from the night before, and the river sort of changing personality over a couple of hours, and the fish that popped out, and I remember that sea trout because I used it in a number of videos later on, but also it was quite a special fish. Couldn't really tell you about the rest of it. It was just a number of hours of everything I hope fishing to be, which is just being absorbed in every single aspect of the day. Yeah, I mean, I'm no specimen hunter. Never been obsessed with that sort of thing. Certainly don't keep a particular catch record. I think if you're match fishing, if you're a match fisherman, going through that process of trying to learn how to improve, data's great. I do enough sort of iterative development based on data in my various jobs to just want to throw that away and go out and stand in a river and get cold and wet or get blinded by the sun or whatever the day brings to me. To not really mind about what the fish was. Yeah,
I'm with you 100%. I tried really hard last year when we were fishing, Emma and I particularly, and I tried to keep a record of water height, temperature, and that lasted 5 trips. And I kind of have got to the stage where I take everything for what it is. And so I might catch fish, particularly if I'm talking about salmon, which isn't a lot of the time, but if I catch a salmon, fabulous, I remember that. I can remember where I caught it. And I was doing I remember I did this now, it was on Facebook, and I looked back, I was filling in my EA salmon return, and I had to remember when I'd caught one. I knew it was around my birthday in April, but I couldn't quite remember. Yeah. And I looked back, and then the previous year, on the 12th of April 2018, I caught a salmon. 12th of April 2019, I caught a salmon as well. So there's no pressure at all for this year.
No.
But I hadn't remembered. I can remember the fish. I can remember what we did. I can remember my birthday, which is on the 10th. My daughter was down. Even she had a go at fishing. But I couldn't tell you what the water height was. I couldn't tell you what flies we had on. No. I just try and take it for what it is. But people who keep detailed diaries have my utmost respect. I've always been a shambles with things like that, and my hope is when I'm too old to be able to go fishing that I can sit in a chair and close my eyes and remember those.
Close your eyes and picture it, not read it.
Yeah, I
mean it really depends. I'm a visual person, and other people are much better with words. And that's why I wasn't academic, and some people were. So I think it's horses for courses. I'm hugely impressed. I mean, we both know David Pilkington from Now and Alarms. I mean, he's got 53 years or something of detailed records, not just for himself, but from the hotel. And it's a wealth of handwritten data, and it's a joy to sort of unpluck and sort of, take out these little nuggets here and there. But, just not for me.
No, I know we've got a piece actually in the winter edition. Nigel Rainton writes everything up in a diary, and then he gets it bound each year.
Yeah,
and
that's
has
sweet.
a little. Yeah, it's really nice,
And
isn't
it's
it?
and it's
Yeah.
a nice. It's if he can pass his interest on to the junior members of his family, it's a lovely legacy
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a sweet thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were, crossing my different kind of mental spaces, if I were the kind of person to record it, I would probably be putting it straight into Excel and running crazy calc on it,
Yeah.
and spitting out something, probably pointless, but it would feel good to me. But nah, I'm struggling for time to get fishing as it is. Let's just get in the river.
Yeah. So you're angling for bass with the fly rod. How old are you around then?
No, we're late teens, probably early 20s, something like that. It's his first time that sort of, got a car of my own, got a driving license, getting to just move around and be more sort of exploratory, and rather than just sort of family holidays and things like that. So now it's up to me when I fish and how I fish and what I spend money on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, did that for a little while, I think that my fishing career is truly unspectacular. I've always had a passion for it, but other things have always stuck their heads in as well. My photography career was great, but it was 13 years of mental weeks. I think I did a 130-hour week once.
Wow! And you were shooting for some serious publications, weren't you?
I was working for Getty Images for 5 years as a staff news photographer. So that took me all over the place, and then did some time for a lot of the broadsheets, a lot for the Financial Times and the Times and the Guardian, Independent, and whoever else. That kept me very busy, and if I can't remember fishing, let's assume it didn't really happen.
Yeah.
I think that was a photography period of my life and not much of a fishing period.
So that's gone away a little bit. Work's taken over, which is fully understandable, and with a busy job as well. And so the bass fishing, was there ever a sort of a little bit of a change where you went to rivers or lakes or somewhere else?
I think I was still a little bit of the assumption that I couldn't afford to get on a river. I think there was some feeling that they were unaffordable and hard to organise. And
so, was there a moment though that you felt, okay, this is it? It's for me. I'm going to fly fish a bit more, or
I broke my leg.
Right. Right, I remember now. Yep.
Yeah, no, I was on some. I nearly said awful stag do. How bad of me! It was a fantastic stag do. Thanks, Alex, for organising it, and thanks, Matt, for getting married. It was awful because 9 minutes into a paintball game, I slid down a bank, caught my foot on a root, and snapped fib and tib. So I got back to London eventually with a rudimentary cast on from the local hospital, and I don't know if do you know John Andrews, antique fishing dealer?
No.
He's a chum of mine from London. Very interesting chap. Used to work in the music industry in the heady days of Super Furry Animals and Primal Scream and stuff for Creation Records. And for reasons that I won't go into, has taken to a life of writing with a pen and drinking tea and the calmer, finer things in life. I'd been talking about fly tying for a while. I'm a big maker of things. I make all sorts of things, and he just said in his way, he's like, right, Bruno, you're going to be up with your foot in the air for 6 weeks. You better get started. And handed me an old canvas fishing bag with some awful fly tie materials. Thanks, John, but they were tricky things to use. All from old auction lots that he picked up. Bit of silk, some random feathers, very nasty lump of wax. And that night I opened a book and started fly tying. About 4 hours later, I got up and walked to my bed with a pin through my ankle that was not load bearing, and I'd completely forgotten that my leg was broken.
Wow.
And it took about 10 steps before I hopped back to find my crutches. Wow. And I thought, well, this is good. And I didn't take any painkillers during that leg break, just did fly tying. And it was good for my pain management, it was good for my headspace. I thought, I like this. What am I going to do with all these flies? So before I was even out of plaster, I was looking at lighter rods and looking for places to explore. And I thought, well, I'm going to need to exercise my leg when it's better. I'm going to need to build up some muscle. So I don't want to just go fishing. I want to go for a hike and go fishing. So I started looking at things like Dartmoor and someone put me on to Theo Pike, who's now my colleague, who had his Trout in Dirty Places. So I met him and bought a copy of him, and he sent me out towards the Oakman. And that's the real start. The rest of it before was just a mess of throwing sticks around. That coming out of a leg break and wanting to walk around and just be energetic in nature, and that was not so long ago.
Well, I remember, I think that's where we first hooked up, and we're sitting in the Fox and the Hounds now. Apologies if there is any background noise. We're sort of, the room I often use hasn't got the heating on at the moment. It's a wedding reception room, so we're sitting in the dining room at the moment, so you may be picking up a little bit of background noise and singing from the chefs. We've had a good lunch there, but that's where we first met. And for those that don't know, the Oakman is a stream in Devon, which is a wonderful little stream, and it's fascinating. My path has been similar, although yours being influenced by Theo's book, and I'm wearing one of his hoodies actually at the moment. Mine was Mike Weaver. Pursuit of Wild Trout. That's why I'm in Devon, and because of that book. So it's kind of interesting to.
Well, hilariously, I'd read a lot of that stuff. Funnily enough, through John Andrews again, because he just always trying to flog me old books. And stupidly enough, I just decided to buy them all. But funnily enough, I read a load of that stuff, but had never quite placed it in my brain solidly enough to put two and two together. And so I had all these stories about the caterpillars falling on the team, and I had all those in my head already. And then I came down here, and then I met Mike and saw his flies and went, can you tell me about that? And he explained the story, and I was like, oh my God, I've known about that for years. You're him. It's so exciting.
Yeah. No, I was starstruck when I first met him, I must admit. And I think the story I've told many times, so I won't bore people with it now. But it was life-changing for me. And so the streams of the West Country, I say the West Country because you're now down in Cornwall, really, aren't you? But our little streams are just fantastic, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can tell how good they are where there are lines on the map that you don't know about. Now, it's not a very large part of the world. It's not like the US blue lining where you can pick a line and think, and no one's probably ever fished it because they couldn't be bothered to walk there. You know, there might be a blue line that's 10 miles away, and you don't know about it because it's so good, it's sewn up. There is some terrific fishing. The weather needs to be right because they can rise and fall on an hour. But when it's right, it's really good.
It's good, honest fishing, and I think the thing I love about it is variety in the sense of, and we talked about it at the very beginning, that one river's shot there's a chance you can go find somewhere else to go fish.
You can go over the hill.
Yeah.
You can go over the hill, new catchment and new rules. And the variety on a catchment level or a river level is one thing, but the second you said variety, I had that word in my head. The variety on a beat. I mean, you don't have those beats which have a character. You have 50-metre sections that have a character. And there's new methods, and there's new techniques, and there's new sort of moments to pause just on every single river that you go to, and that's what I love. And I do really miss it when I go to other rivers that either through alterations or just being, I don't know, different part of the world, different substrate, are sort of slightly more homogenous, and you kind of trickle up them, bashing away upstream, and there's almost a rhythm to it, and it's unbroken. And I guess there's something nice in that. But I do love it down here where you stop at a pool for, something stupid, and then finally get up, and then the pace quickens and it slows down, and it's a terrific place to be, and you're never very far from something fishable.
No. I often say I live between Dartmoor and Exmoor, and some might say it's a spooky coincidence, but it certainly isn't.
Well, unfortunately, the reason why the last year's been poor is that I currently live very close to a lot of sea and quite far away from any good rivers, which is an impressive feat in Cornwall, because you're normally not more than about 2 miles from a fishable river, and I've managed to find myself in a lovely little village with the sea and the estuary all around me, but not really a fishable trout stream for about only about 12 miles.
That's a long way in Devon, though.
That's a long way. That's 40 minutes drive or something.
So if I remember rightly, you weren't working with Westcountry Rivers Trust when you came down, were you?
No.
So how did that all come about?
No, I was just doing what I had done for the previous decade, which was anything, anything I could. I was sort of making weird contraptions for some sort of ad agencies and things, and I was laying floors in people's houses and building kitchens, and even doing some leather work and some artwork and anything to make a scratch, really. And then one day I saw this advert for the Westcountry Rivers Trust wanting someone who could sort of do all of that.
What, leather work?
I think the leather work wasn't in there, but it had like sort of, marketing experience, e-commerce experience, app development, design, conservation and river work. And I was like, that cliche of people saying, always tailor your CV to the job application. And I looked at it and thought, they've tailored their job application to my CV.
So it was inevitable you got the job?
I don't think it was inevitable. That would be very presumptuous. But I knew I was going to be a good fit, and it worked. It continues to work. I've trimmed down my hours now, but it continues to work quite well. So it was a really interesting period. Making the app was the main thing. So we took the Westcountry Angling Passport, which was one of the earliest. I think it was the earliest sort of token scheme.
Angling 2000.
Angling 2000, yeah. Give you some idea of when it was made, 1998.
Yep.
And that went through an evolution into the Angling Passport, and it was my job to sort of reimagine it into an app. Went through a few sort of periods of design iteration and trying to kind of work out how it could work and what the problems were, and really interesting tasks like when 90% of your customers are, like you've mentioned, 65, 70, 75, possibly not smartphone owners, possibly got poor eyesight, maybe not particularly technologically aware, you've got to build it for them. But you've also got this incredible carrot, which is a mobile phone app that could really open up fishing to millennials. And so it had to be designed for younger, app literate, perhaps not even yet fishing interested people, but still needed to be usable and understandable and easy enough for the existing customers. So that was like incredibly cool task for me to get my teeth into. And I hope we sort of done it. We've had quite a few problems. It's very difficult to build an app with sort of charity finance. So my experience before is you build something, you test it, work out what's wrong, you fix it, you build another one, you keep doing it. Unfortunately, the way things are funded in the charity sector, it's not really practical. So we've had to do it in longer, more separate chunks. So unfortunately, people have had to deal with a few bugs, but I've done my best to try and keep them up and running. So that was bloody brilliant. That was amazing.
Yep, and you found that's been successful.
Yeah, it's been growing. We've had a few people tear their hair out. I've had some bad emails. I've also had some glowing emails. We've just released a new version in the last couple of weeks, which is a huge improvement. And looking forward to next season just to see what the take-up is. But the take-up's already extremely strong. I can't actually give you an exact number at the moment, but I think at one point 40% of the fishing had moved over to the app, and that was year one.
Wow.
And year two has only been an increase. So it's doing the right thing, and it's a sort of, it's not a white label product, but it's not just for the West Country. So we've got Southwest Lakes coming into it. A few other people who were interested in opening up fishing but didn't want to be in a passport scheme are coming to it. So we've got the Heddon Valley. Yeah.
We had a picture of that in the very first, I wasn't allowed to name it, in the very first fly culture, looking down there.
I think you're allowed to name it now. Yeah. That's in the app. It's 12 quid. You go to the very tip of Dartmoor, walk down to the beach, stand in the surf and cast into the very last, like, tiny little scrapes of the river.
For trout.
And beautiful trout popping out. I know Nick's been up there a couple of times and he has been coming back glowing. So yeah, things like that are now popping up. It's enabled us to take beats that were in the middle of nowhere and cost us a fortune driving around collecting soggy bits of paper, and it's enabled us to just go, bosh, go for it. And that can only mean more fishing, more availability. And I mean, going back a little bit, I was talking about the difficulty I found getting onto rivers at first. And I'd go to post offices and there'd be a sort of raffle book which you had to write your name
exactly
on.
The post office you're talking about.
Change under the counter in an ice cream tub. And I mean, it's all very quaint and lovely. I don't have a pen and my handwriting is appalling. I mean, I really struggle. I've cut a tendon in my index finger, which doesn't help, but it's never been very good. And the idea of cash, I pretty much don't have cash on me. I have a couple of quid for the toll bridge, that's it. The idea of going through this rigmarole of finding a post office away from the river to write my name out and then hand them cash and them not being able to give me change for whatever reason or whatever kind of strange thing might happen was just like, it was actually a bit of a barrier. I was a little bit almost scared to start trout fishing. And so I wanted to wipe that out. And I wanted a 16-year-old kid with a moped to just download the app, buy some tokens, go to a river, scan it, fish, give us a catch return.
The exception, I guess, to that is the chap, and he's just retired, hasn't he, who at Postbridge on Dartmoor. Yeah. And I love to go in there and chew the fat with him.
You still can go in and chew the fat with him. He's moved up to Sticklepath.
He has, absolutely.
And you can still go in, and actually, interestingly, because of the way the Duchy fishery works, so the Duchy fishery is for Prince Charles's estate on the top of Dartmoor, essentially, and it's got some incredible fishing for very, very little money. They want to support the local businesses, which is why you've always had to go and get your permit from the hotels and post offices specifically, rather than being able to buy them online. And as such, the app, you still have to go into Two Bridges Hotel or Princetown Post Office or Post Bridge or whatever, and ask them for the sign to scan. So you're still interacting with them, and you've still got the opportunity to go, and I'll have a pasty and a can of Coke, please.
Perfect. Good. I'm pleased you said that, because that was going to be my one request, particularly as the chap from Post Bridge has gone now as well. But because sometimes it can be problematic, can't it? But I guess that's where you were coming from, to support those businesses.
It's important part. It's an important part for the duchy to maintain that, and I think it's important. It's important for not just the businesses, but that whole community up there to be part of it, because they do have these people just trudging around all over the place, and also they get commission on those sales. So either spread your love and go to different places, or if you particularly like someone, go to that person.
And I think it's, while we're touching on Dartmoor, I think for any fly angler, it's one of those must-visit places, isn't it? You know, how many miles? Is it 20 kilometres?
No, I had to draw up the map the other day, and we've been underestimating it for years, just to sort of take off some of the kind of tiddly little bits. No, it's huge.
Wow.
It's many more miles. There's so many bits of fishable river there, I couldn't do a calculation, because it's just like, well, it would be stupid to say 100 miles of bank.
Yeah.
But for 12 quid a day.
Yeah. It's just amazing value, amazing fishing, nearly all dry fly.
Yeah.
Free rising fish, and you can just wander, and you will see people occasionally, but often you can just move and fish somewhere else. There's plenty of room, and
absolutely,
it's just such, whenever I fish there, I feel like a kid again. Somebody I guided on there said it's like soul food.
Oh, God.
And, you know, it feeds you and takes you back to why we do it, I think.
Although a bad day can take that soul away from you.
Oh, it can kick you hard, can't it? It can kick you hard. And
I've always wanted to, and I keep meaning to, but I haven't had the time. I always wanted to give... it was a Mike Weaver article. The chap from the prison.
Roy.
What's it called?
Not Roy.
Chap who worked in the Dartmoor prison, and would go fishing on his lunch break, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
And he fished a team of spiders upstream on a long rod from the bank. Yeah. Really want to give that a go one day.
Yes. A friend of mine, actually, Carl Humphreys, they had an England qualifier, and he qualified for England fishing spiders on Cherry Brook, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was a few years back now.
And want to try even more now.
Yeah. Oh, it'll come to me, the name.
Yeah.
It's with Brian somebody.
Brian...
it'll come. Suddenly I'm going to blurt out the name anyway.
Or something like that. I can't remember.
It's gonna come. I know it well as well.
I've got it in my file somewhere, so I can look it up.
Dartmoor is. I really, I'm talking about my home neck of the woods, but it's just fantastic fishing, varied, really interesting,
and it's always got a surprise.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
When a monster comes up from some pot that you can't see.
I was guiding somebody once on Cherry Brook, actually, and he'd hooked a standard fish, 6-7 inches, and something came out after it. I know we've talked about sizable fish off mic as well. Yeah. But I said a word I shouldn't have said. But I grabbed him and said it. And it was absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah.
And a tiny little fish, tiny little stream you could pretty much jump across.
Yeah.
And, it's amazing what you can find in some of those streams. So, yes, I think it's one of those must-tick-off places, and a wonderful series of rivers to actually fish. And, driving up there, the views, just everything about it is wonderful.
You can make any kind of any size of day you want. You could drive the wrong way over the moor and have a lunchtime cast. You can wild camp and stay there for a week. It's like the best travel agent. It's got every single offer and option you could possibly want. Terrific.
Yeah. I remember a gent I guided, and he must have, sadly he's passed on now, but Brian, and we fished early season. It was similar to these conditions, overcast, dank, wet, and he must have been in his late 70s and was giggling like a small child. with these fish coming up and hitting. I think we were fishing a parachute coachman because he could see it. That was and a lot of how lightning fast those fish are, and he was missing some of them because his background was to set on chalk stream fish. But it was just fantastic fun, and yeah, I can only say wonderful things about it. It was life-changing for me, and it still feels the same to me.
Yeah.
So let's go off in a new direction for you, I guess, now that you've taken on a role at the Wild Trout Trust, and your first role is a pretty big one, really, isn't it? Getting the auction together and stepping into Denise Ashton's shoes, who's been doing it for so many years. Yeah,
Denise, very lovely woman that she is. It seems a bit odd to say they're big shoes to fill, but they're big shoes to fill. And I really stepped right into the deep end because the timing of the change was right on the start of the build up to the auction. Yeah, and I've spent the last few months sort of trudging through a huge database of just amazing fishing from all over the place. I mean, you've got a lovely lot in there. Just organising photos and descriptions and dates, and frankly, it should be for most people a really boring task, but of course you just get to speak to people about rivers and fishing and it's not so bad. It's a lot of work. Sort of as we speak, I'm on the kind of tail end of it, and I'm moving on to other tasks in the role. But we've got some incredible things. Fennel Priory,
right.
Nigel.
Yep.
He's just offered us a great bit on the Welsh Dee, staying in his heated teepee, cooking over an open fire for a weekend fishing for trout. I might bid on that myself. There's all sorts. Got brilliant chalk stream lots, Scottish trout lots and salmon lots, and everything you could possibly imagine. Loads of lovely art as well, flies from Lee Evans and Philippa Hake, and brilliant stuff.
I love the esoteric lots.
Yeah.
The rivers. I used to always try and get the Day with Roger Smith in the Welsh borders, and I think I fished with him 2 or 3 times, and they were really good fun. And the weird and wonderful rivers. I think one of Theo's home rivers, there was a lot there that we missed out on, which I was keen to get. It wasn't with Theo, it was with somebody else, a guided day. Can't remember what the name of the river is, but it's in Somerset somewhere. And
I've tried to build in some of that experience and esoteric stuff, because we can all buy day tickets, and now some of these are money can't buy day tickets. There's a couple of estates there where they're not fished at all. We've got some virgin rivers that have never been fished, or at least in living memory. But adding in that special little, you can't just go and get that. So we've got Luke Jennings.
Oh, wonderful! Yes.
So Luke Jennings, author of
Killing Eve,
but for the
Blood Knots.
For the angler, the Blood Knots, and for everyone else, the Villanelle books that Killing Eve was based on. He's not guiding. He's just going to come and spend a lovely day on the test with the lucky winner.
Wow.
So if you've got any Luke Jennings fans, and he's a mate of mine, and I've fished with him a few times, and he's
a good guy.
He's a really good guy.
I know.
So you've got stuff like that. Gilly Bate as if you fish with her, she will have mentioned her secret river, and it won't be secret to the winner because they'll be going there with her. So that's a special lot for the right person.
Lovely.
Great stuff.
And it'll be. I've got to self-promote my one. This is. I've.
Can I?
If
need
you
a
listen,
drum roll.
I've packed up guiding, so this year is going to be my last ever guided day. So if you do, you probably pay more not to want to fish with me. But it is really important it's for the Wild Trout Trust. This auction is really important.
If it doesn't sell, you have to keep guiding. So people need to bid hard to get you off the river.
I'm sure Emma will probably to keep me. But for the Wild Trout Trust, it's a really important time, isn't it? And the money goes back into...
The money, yeah. I mean, I don't want to bore people with the way charities are financed and structured, but money that we can spend without restriction is really important for just, I mean, mundane, simple things like cash flow, but also just being able to do what's necessary and needed rather than having to go through the rigmarole of bid writing to find the money to do that specific task. So it means we can be more responsive. It's just essential for the running of a charity. Every year it basically it gets used, and it gets used well. If you're interested, near the time of the auction, which is the 20th of March to the 29th of March. Near the time of the auction, the website will have lots of information, show how we have spent it in the last year. And so if you want to learn more and encourage yourself to bid more, then that's the place to do it. That's wildtrout.org.
And can anyone bid?
It's not members only or anything like that. The auction's actually held on eBay. If you're in the States and you like the look of a rod, or you happen, a day with Pete, or whatever it is, and like I say, we've got some terrific art. We've even got some wallpaper this year, but very nice wallpaper with a lovely river scene. You can bid from anywhere in the world. We've got some new tackle, some old tackle, all sorts. Bid hard, because if you're unsure about it and you don't bid, someone else might get it from the starting price. And it's not about the bargains. It's about building the energy to make some valuable cash for what I hope you all agree is a very valuable charity.
Absolutely. Amen to that. And I'm trying to think how long these auctions have been going. I know from the very beginning, it used to be in some posh club in London, and my friend Ray and I, the dude, turned up in our jeans and T-shirt, and the club wouldn't let you in a T-shirt, so they lent us jackets.
I'm afraid a jacket and trousers required for the dining room.
It was like that, and it was quite
They didn't
amusing.
offer to fit you out with a tailor-made one in the corner.
Sadly not. This one, I think if I went near a naked flame, I'd have been in trouble. But they were great, and you could physically bid at those ones, which were fantastic fun. But I think eBay's a better way of reaching a bigger audience in a wider way.
It's got its pros and cons. It's got its pros and cons. I mean, I don't know how many sort of charity auctions of the old ilk you've been to. I donated to a few years back, and they kindly invited me to the dinner. And of course, everyone gets drunk and bids wildly, and things go through the roof. I had one of my flies sell for £300.
Wow.
One fly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it was a fully dressed fly, but it was, I was like, bloody hell.
Wow.
And I thought about putting my prices up, and then I realised the person was just hammered.
Yeah.
We don't get that kind of energy on eBay, but we get no fees. It's simple and it's global, and people can be involved. So that's really important. Bit of both, really.
And it's a big audience as well, isn't it? It's a much bigger way to reach that. And as a result of that, do you find that you get more members as it's happening, or just after, or? Personally,
too early to say. So I'll tell you next year. I would think it's generally quite a good publicity drive as well, for us as a trust. In what we do, and the fact that we do partially run on membership and definitely on the charity auction. So it's all good engagement. Learning about the people that are interested in us, and then us being able to do something great with them.
And having hosted many of these over the years, and been a winner of auction lots, you just meet so many good people. It's great fun to meet people, show them, if you're hosting it, your home water.
I'm looking forward to hosting a couple. Well, I'm hosting one this year, and I'm looking forward to exactly that. Most of the testimonials that we get back from people are all about that. They, the chances of them hitting the prime whatever it is, prime mayfly or prime run or whatever, it's always going to be slim. But they always come back and go, what a terrific day with such a lovely person. There's a great bunch of people all out there, and you need to drive around and find them.
And I think people like being a guide for a day as well, don't they? They enjoy some of them.
That comes from a guide's perspective. Yeah. I don't know. Some of them probably like it too much, and some of them are massively daunted by it.
Yes.
And it really depends on who turns up. I hope I haven't actually put the word guide on my lot, because that would probably be a bit rich. Accompaniment.
That's a good way to say it. Accompanied by, absolutely. Yeah. So that's really interesting, hearing a little bit about that auction. I know it kind of pretty well as well, but hopefully listeners will get a sense of what it is, what it's about, and most importantly, what it's for as well. Let's come back to you as a fisherman then. So 2020 is coming. What's ticking your box? What ticks your box for a day's fishing? You're on the Delank. You're just how are you gonna do it? What does it mean to you?
I'm in a moment of transition. I used to really love going out for a solid day, starting too early, finishing too late, on my own, Kelly Kettle, the works, especially on a nice remote beat. Most of the fishing I did last year through accident was with people, and that's not something I've ever really done, and I enjoyed it more, and I particularly enjoyed a really quick turnover of sharing a rod. Alex on the Arundel Arms, we had an amazing day fishing the very top of the lid, very, very top. It was quite a slug of dirty water coming down, so we went to the top to see if it cleared first. And we literally fished each pool till we had a bite, and then we switched rods. And we were both in the water at the same time. We made no effort to be stealthy, work around each other particularly carefully. We just enjoyed chucking some fluff upstream at some trout. We still had a really good day. I think we had sort of 8 fish each or something. It wasn't the best, but it was great. And sharing that time is quite new to me. Started off talking about how much I love just being absorbed in the space. I'm going to explore being absorbed in the company of someone else this year. In terms of type of fishing, probably need to, partially for my job, but I'm probably going to explore out of the West Country a little bit more this year. Get back to South Wales. Also really interested to go up to Yorkshire and explore some of the rivers up there. So
the Ure. I love the Ure.
Oh dear. So yeah, more and more varied and more company. That's my 2020 season, hopefully.
Brilliant. And sharing rod's a really fun way to do it. I've always done it, and I'm sort of going slightly more the other way, only because of having guided for so many years that I'm used to being next to somebody.
Yep.
Now I kind of like, and I fished closely with a friend of mine, Perry, that works with us on the magazine as the artistic director, and sometimes we've got this really nice thing that sometimes we'll fish and share a rod, but other times I'm going to go and fish there and he'll go and fish there, and we'll be close and say, oh, I've just had a nice fish, or I just missed one. You might want to...
Yeah.
And it works really well. Those moments, though, you've got to choose the right person as well. It's really important, isn't it?
No, that's essential.
Your share... Because it can easily be that somebody holds on to that rod and wants to...
So that's just unacceptable. But also, the opposite, I don't like either, where... you meet up in the morning at the car park and you maybe have a cup of coffee from the thermos and you chat about flies and all the usual cliches of meeting up to go fishing with someone, and then you walk to opposite ends of the beat and don't see each other for 4 hours.
That's not fishing together, is it? No.
And I can't abide that either. Yeah. No, it has to be the right person who's in tune with what you want to take out of the day. And finding those people is as much of a a chaser's catching the fish in the first place.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier, there's a picture I put up from one of the earlier magazines, and it's two friends of mine that, you know them both as well, I think, that were fishing, and it's a beautiful photo taken by Toby Coe of Duncan Rayner netting a fish for Keith Hershelman, and it's a big fish.
Yeah.
But you can't disguise how happy he is for his friend catching that fish. Now that's when you know you've got people that you want to be fishing with, because you can't fake that. And I know he's a big lad, Duncan. I know I happened to be with him when I caught my first steelhead, and he gave me a bear hug that I nearly passed out. It was so tight. But things like that are really, and to share those moments with people is really important, actually. I don't
know if there's an extra layer of sort of empathy that's needed to build these relationships, but I'm not sure it's an empathy that can be generated off the bank. You know, I think I could go, if I found a couple of blokes from my local who like fly fishing, and we got talking about fly fishing, and we just liked fly fishing, and I said, right, come on, let's go to the river. Now that's going to happen, but I'm not sure that connection would exist. I think it's built on the river. And those guys fish together a lot, and that's why that exists. But that's a terrific picture. I mean, if you haven't experienced that moment in anyone's life, whether you've got the rod in your hand, or the net in your hand, or the camera in your hand, well, keep going and you will. And finding those people is important to be able to spend time with, and I'm deeply sad that my life is so deeply entrenched in fishing, and I always say to people, if I had to explain it, you wouldn't understand it, but I gravitate towards those people because it means so much to me, and it still does. And I think I've said on previous one, I think I love it even more than I've ever done, and not guiding now has allowed me to say, right, okay, actually I'm going to give some time for myself. And we talk about company, and we were talking about the dog earlier, and even just, you know, Emma and I spend so many happy hours together, but sometimes it'd be me and the dog, and he kind of gets, I chat away to him, and he waits next to me, and he gets excited when I hook a fish, and, you know, I show it. He doesn't lick them or bite them or anything like that. He loves the bit where I let them go and they shoot off. He wants to see. Hugely jealous of that.
And it's great. And he's not an angel.
Is he going upstream and spotting yet, though?
No, he waits next to me.
Oh.
And if we're fishing down a pool for salmon, he will step with you. It's amazing. You know, so even company like that, and I chat away to him, and that's great. But I guess I'm coming, and it's all good, isn't it?
Yeah. But right earlier on, you said, you know, collecting data on your angling scores makes you a better fisherman. Experiencing more on the river makes you a better fisherman, even for the day when you catch nothing.
And a better person.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, if you're a match fisherman, it's a very different prospect. If you're a specimen hunter, different prospect. But being able to go and just take it in and come away with, you know, 10 notches or a blank or whatever, it doesn't matter. And if you're doing it with mates, no one's got upset, no one's in a huff. You're all just as elated as when you got there. It builds that character, it builds that connection and community, and it makes you to how I feel about fishing, it makes you a better fisherman. And that's probably why I'm a terrible fisherman at the moment, because I haven't spent enough time doing it.
Well, hopefully you can put that right this year. You said you want to fish with people. It would be really cool to hook up and do some fishing together.
It's not today.
No, definitely not. But we've spoken for well over an hour now, and I've really enjoyed it. Thank you, Bruno, for coming along and chatting with me. It's been fantastic. And I hope 2020 is a good one for you for lots of reasons. I hope we get to catch some fish together. That would be fantastic. So thank you for coming along.
And bid strong.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Fly Culture podcast. Thank you for all the feedback. It's been lovely to hear that you're really, really enjoying it. You're also enjoying the magazine as well. We deeply appreciate the support that we've had for what we're actually trying to do. We just love fishing. We're just like you. If you haven't discovered our hard copy magazine, Fly Culture, it's available from flyculturemag.com. We only give you content. There's no adverts. It's pure content from us. And it's about the sort of conversation actually I've just had with Bruno. It's about the why, not the how. So we explore those things. Lots of great writers, photography to match it. It's all packaged in a really high quality paper. I've turned into a paper geek. I'm not going to bother you with that, but we're really proud with the way that it's looked. So thank you, John Osborne, once again for making it look so fantastic. We're also pretty active on social media as well. I've been doing the Instagram of late, so apologies for some of the dodgy bits and pieces, but I'm learning quickly and I try and get a post out every day, worst case 2 days, that I hope you enjoy. And we try and encapsulate again what fishing means to us on there as well. And on Facebook and Twitter, similar sort of stuff as well. And we hope that this podcast as well you find interesting. So this is Pete Tye just signing off from the Fly Culture podcast. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll be doing some more real soon. Thank you.